Hey coaches, Corbin Smith here with More Than the Scoreboard. I wanted to let you know I created MTTS Sports Group. We specialize in team leadership training, leadership speaking, and staff development seminars in order to align your staff together. We also offer the Tour Crucible event, which is a team leadership stress test, 6 hours, fully immersive for you. Go to mttsportsgroup.com and let us know how we can help. Enjoy the podcast. All right. Hey, so we got episode 70, big episode here for me. 70, and we're here with the infamous Mycal Anders. Mike is he's kind of a legend. I'll say that. So Mike is amongst a lot of different things, and I'll just go down through it. Performance consultant. You're the founder of Next Level Performance Consulting. Mm-hmm. Alignment First podcast. You are a former U.S. Marine. You're a certified consultant, best-selling author, founder of Next Level Performance Consulting, like we talked about. You have coached thousands and thousands of high performers to integrate their leadership, their wellness and identity through a system rooted in clarity, discipline, and aligned execution. And I was on your podcast the other day, and it was fabulous. I think we're very like-minded. You have been a football coach. You were a college football player. You've been a football coach. You've been a strength and conditioning coach at multiple levels. You have been a leader of men everywhere you have been. So I wanted to have you on. We've had a couple of mindset guys on before, but I think you bring something different to the table for our listeners, because most of our listeners are coaches and parents, and we even get some athletes to listen. But your perspective is very, very unique in the sense that you have a military background. You started out at the Air Force Academy, playing football, and then transferred to, was it East Texas?
Yep. East Texas A&M.
Commerce?
Yep.
East Texas A&M Commerce. God, those Texas schools, man.
It's a long one, man. Yeah. When I was there, it was Texas A&M Commerce, but everybody stopped listening at A&M, and they're like, "Oh, right. You're an Aggie?" Like, no, the Lions.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm honored that you're on, because I think, again, as I was saying, your perspective and what you've experienced throughout your life is unique. And I think in today's day and age, and what we're focused on with More Than the Scoreboard podcast, is leadership development, character development, culture. Yeah. And it starts with a mindset. And I think there's a lot of football coaches, and I was one of those guys included, that for a little bit, I didn't understand how important a person's mindset was when it came to performing at the highest level that they could perform at.
Right.
Because that's different for everybody. So, talk to our listeners a little bit about, how you go about, because I know you train athletes. You just don't train, men and women. You train athletes, you train younger people, but how do you attack that? And what would you say to the coaches about how important it is, and really how to, to dive in and pull that positive, resilient mindset out of their athletes?
Yeah. So I'll start with our framework of ARA, ARA, anchor, release, and align. And what I love about this construct is that it works in the micro from moment to moment, and it works over the long term at a macro level as well. And what it is essentially is an identity first approach to accomplishing goals and performance. When you look at the conversation coaches have amongst their peers and with their athletes, it's very goal centric. And if everybody, that your locker room and your competition, is trying to win a championship, then what's the differentiator? Right.
Right.
What made Alabama special what made the Air Force Academy special, what made Commerce special when Coach Conley got there was the identity of the team that makes the attainment of said goals inevitable. But if you have, essentially 85 guys and a cast of coaches that have set their North Star on a championship, and you haven't put the identity of the team first, and I'm not talking about buzzwords like integrity or team first or whatever the slogan of the season is going to be. All 85 players and your coaches are going to take a different route to that championship. Right? We're rowing.
Right.
We might have all oars in the water, but we're all rowing at different paces.
Yep.
We're rowing at a different cadence. We're rowing at a different intensity, and we wonder why the Alabamas, if they're and now the Indianas of the world, become the cream of the crop, is because they put the identity of the team first. We are all going to take the same route to the championship. And I love using the example of six-pack abs. In working,
which I don't have and I'll never have.
Well, it's in the example, it's just really low-hanging fruit in that a lot of people say they want six-pack abs, right?
Right.
But they don't want six-pack abs because they're healthier. They want six-pack abs because of the identity that those six-pack abs substantiates, right? I can stand in front of my board with more confidence because I've got six-pack abs. I'm more attractive to the opposite sex because I have six-pack abs.
Right.
Right. However, you right here, right now, without six-pack abs, do not yet possess the behaviors, beliefs, patterns, rituals to create six-pack abs. Therefore, the identity is never achieved. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, 100%.
So when we implement aura, we have to create space to sit still. We have to sit still long enough to decide for ourselves what's actually important to us. And once we have those priorities in order, we then release everything that doesn't serve that identity and or those priorities. Just get rid of all the extra shit that is inconsequential, that doesn't matter, or actually gets in the way. And in a lot of cases, that's shedding an outdated identity. That's getting rid of limiting beliefs. That's getting rid of patterns and behaviors that may have facilitated your success up to this point, and now they're the things that are in the way. All right. And from there, we take aligned action in that identity. New patterns, new beliefs, new rituals, new rooms, new environments that make six-pack abs inevitable.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. And that works at a personal level, and it works at an organizational level to get everybody not only moving towards the same goal. Everybody wants a championship. Duh. That's why we're here.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like that, like if you're not here for that, you're by default in the wrong room. However, through that process of aura, now you can get everybody vibrating at the same frequency, and you have a level of accountability like, hey, dude, that bullshit doesn't get us where we want to go. Knock it off. And you can now leverage it from a cultural perspective, a standard operating procedure perspective, and an interpersonal level of accountability.
Yeah. I think identity is super important when you're a coach. It's super important. I think it's very easy for coaches to say, and not all coaches do it, and especially at the high school level, they
Mhm.
forget. I mean, I watched my girlfriend's son was a senior and played, for the local high school and
Mhm.
starting tailback, and it was like this kid was a bruiser, man. He was an inside runner, and they kept trying to throw the ball. And I talked to his dad
Mhm.
after all the games, but early on, and he was the running back coach. And I said, Vince, I said, dude, I said, and they had just gotten beat. And I said, what's your identity on, go in and ask your offense coordinator, what's your identity on offense?
Mhm.
Because I guarantee you he's going to have all these ideas and he doesn't understand. I said, as a coach, and you know this because you played and you've coached,
Mhm.
and Vince knew this. It's like, as a head coach, our identity, even as a coordinator, our identity was we were going to pound the football. We were
Mhm.
going to spread you out. We were going to go one back, but we were also going to use motions and all
Mhm.
this. But our identity offensively, people knew, our opponents knew that we were going to try and hit you square in the mouth. And
Mhm.
if you beat us by 50 points, at least we'd walk away and they would know that we were a physical, aggressive, hard hitting team.
Mhm.
That just kept coming.
Right.
And that was our identity on the field. And so I think it's a lot easier for coaches to set an identity, offense, defense,
Mhm.
as a team on the field. I think where I've struggled and where other coaches have struggled is
Mhm.
that identity within your culture.
Yep.
And with the turnover being in high school and now
Mhm.
in college because of the transfer portal, every year there's so
Mhm.
much turnover. Do you have to recreate or reevaluate or adapt or adjust that identity from a culture standpoint, even tweak it a little bit every year?
I mean, I think adaptability is 100% a uh, highly leverageable characteristic attribute, and the academies, and granted, there are different constraints associated
Right.
with um, a military program. But I think outside of that, Notre Dame is probably the closest.
Mhm.
Maybe Stanford too,
Yeah.
in terms of like you can't be dumb and go there.
No.
And at the same time, not only are you going to hold a there's the expectation of high academic performance, but we're also going to play at a high level as well. That identity transcends the transfer portal or like when you name those schools, it doesn't matter who the coach is, right? It doesn't
Right.
matter when they won their last Heisman. None of that stuff matters. You know what I mean? So to answer
Yep.
your question, done right, I mean, Penn State still linebacker you,
Mhm.
you
Sure
know,
is.
if you want to play running back, you go to, if you want to get drafted as a running back, you go to Bama, you know, like
Mhm.
those things are, are transcendent when done correctly. And then you adapt in terms of how you communicate that culture and hold accountability to it with the roster of players that you have. You
Right.
know,
Right.
my brother was on Saban's first championship team at Alabama,
Oh,
and
really?
yeah, he played his first 2 seasons under Mike Shula, and then Saban came in for the last three. He's like, dude, for the first 2 seasons I was there, can I cuss?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
He's like, for the first 2 seasons that was there, I thought about changing my name to motherfucker because that's all he ever called me, you know?
Right.
And Saban uh, does a really masterful job. And I think we talked about this offline. Uh, my old man always said there's four boys. We're all 6 foot, 200 plus. And he would tell me, he gave me this wisdom when I was a teenager and I didn't understand until I became a father. He said, I raised you all the same and I treat you all differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meaning the standard is the standard. However, how I hold you accountable to that standard is 100% based on how you need to receive the message.
That's
So
powerful.
my big brother was, our family's war child, and he was going to go against the grain no matter what and want to try everything himself. And really go head on into the storm and learn life's unteachable lessons. And my dad just had to let him do that and
Yeah.
just and put enough guardrails on him that he didn't make a permanent mistake. Right. For me, we could just sit down and talk about things. For my two little brothers, is like, I just need to put you in front of men who exemplified this message I'm trying to get across to you because you're not going to hear it from me.
Yeah.
But the standard is the standard.
Right.
None of that changes. And I think that's from a coaching perspective, a really important skill set. One, it's humility in that I don't know everything. And at the same time, me, the person, may not necessarily possess the rapport or the connection or the communication skills to get this message across. However, that's where you leverage your assistant coaches,
Right.
right? That's where I'm like, okay, you don't want to hear it from me. Let me make an introduction to Corbin, right? And he'll get that message across because
Well, I no.
you possess uh, a status, uh, you exemplify something that is like, you just might be too damn close to the situation.
Right. Right. No, and I think so I want to hit on that before I ask you one more
Mm-hmm.
question about identity. But when I was a young coach,
Mm-hmm.
my dad was out of coaching. I was probably 29 or 30. And remember my dad saying to me, he's like, when you build a staff, you have to have a diverse staff. And in my young, uh, naive mind, when it
Mm-hmm.
came to being a leader of other men, was
Mm-hmm.
that I automatically, my mind went to, okay, so you need white guys, you need black guys, you need Polynesian guys. Like that's what I thought, right? And I think that's what most people hear when they hear the word diversity,
Right.
especially nowadays.
Sure.
And I said that to him, and he said, "No, no, 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 no." He said, "Yes, that's a piece of it."
Right.
He said, "But you can't have a staff with all the same age guys. You have to have older guys. You have to have guys that are in their 30s. You have to have younger guys. You have to have culture
Mm-hmm.
and experiences have to be different. You don't want all these guys that have grown up around coaches their whole life, right? You
Mm-hmm.
don't want all these guys that grew up in a well-to-do neighborhood or grew up in the hood or grew up experience. You have to be diverse when you hire
Mm-hmm.
coaches and the people that you bring in, because, and I didn't even ask, he said, because he said a kid that I'm close to, and I think we talked about this yesterday, but my dad was super close, when he was at SC. This, like, he was closer to these guys than most of the rest of the team. uh, Junior Seau, Mark Carrier, Cleveland Coulter, Willie McGinnis. I could go on, and there were guys where they would just go in and sit down and talk to him
Mm-hmm.
because they had a connection with him, right?
Right.
But for other guys, even their own position coach,
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't necessarily go talk to their position coach about personal things or they would go to another coach, whether it be the coach who recruited them or somebody,
Mm-hmm.
because they connected
Yep.
better. And so I think that's the other big thing about leadership, and we'll get into that in a few, but
Mm-hmm.
is a is a the connection is
Yeah.
key. You have to, as a leader, you have to be able to connect to
Yep.
all types of people. We were talking about the Tour Crucible event that we're
Mm-hmm.
doing for these, and we need to talk offline more about that because I want to get you involved.
Sure.
Um, but I was talking to a former Green Beret, and he's like, "Hey," and he's in Tennessee, and he's like, "Hey, we got some schools." He said, "I've connected with these two female women that are former, military and are
Mm-hmm.
badass." And I'm like,
Yep.
"Dude, bring them. Let's
Yep.
get them." Like, I don't. That just adds another layer to the, not diversity. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care. I don't care. I don't give a shit about any of that when it comes
Right.
to I want to surround myself with the people that are going to make me better and help those that I serve, right?
Right.
So I said, dude, if they're badass, bring them in.
Yep.
Like, let's go. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care. Um, that's a cool thing that your brother was talking about between,
Yeah.
and no disrespect to Shula. I mean, every staff's different, but
Totally.
Saban's the master. I
Well,
mean,
and you gotta to Shula's credit, say what you want about his ability to coach and win.
right.
that dude could recruit
Yeah.
because the team that Saban won that first championship with, those were Shula's seniors, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yep.
And if there's anything to be said about leadership, it's a top-down initiative.
Mhm.
And those seniors had to buy in to Saban to bring it down to the underclassmen and the red shirts. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, uh, but that's a character trait all by itself. Going back to your
Sure it is.
your leadership pyramid, like that's a bunch of self leaders. You know,
Mhm.
if you listen to Eric talk about, because he's getting ready for his last fight in the UFC, and he's like, dude, hands down, I prefer being mano a mano in the octagon than ever going back to playing football
Yeah.
because I can rely on me.
Right.
And but what that says to the foundation of uh your leadership structure is that's self-leadership. Like the buck stops here, you know, and that's one less person that you have to babysit or has a question mark over their head as to whether or not they're going to show up and do what they're supposed to do. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
and again, that I mean, that like I look at the 2 places my dad got fired. He got fired at USC
Mhm.
and he got fired at Missouri, and then he left U of A to go to SC. The person that came in after my dad at U of A was Dick Tomey.
Mhm.
And he elevated that program to another level that we would have gotten, that my dad would have gotten to. But um, Dick Tomey was always very complimentary of my dad, and they actually became really good friends. And when I wrote the book, Coach
Mhm.
Tomey's passed on, but when I wrote the book, I reached out to his widow
Mhm.
because she has written multiple books, and so he was very complimentary. They became very, very close friends. At Missouri, Gary Pinkel came from Toledo, replaced
Mhm.
us, and again, same thing. And Gary, and my dad became very close friends, and there's something to be said about being a real leader,
Mhm.
like my dad was, like Dick Tomey was, like Gary Pinkel was, because when my dad went in places, he would do the same thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, he'd have to tear some things down to make it his own, but he was always very complimentary of the previous coach.
Mhm.
When I left places or got fired as a head coach, I did the same thing. I would reach out to the new guy and say, "Hey, what do you need from me?"
Mhm.
Because that's your job as a leader, to you care about the kids, so make it about the kids, not about
Right.
yourself.
Right.
Um,
100%.
real quick, I want you to imagine you have a room full of coaches right here.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're all kind of thinking the same thing. And I raise my hand and I say, Mike, here's my problem.
Mhm.
My problem is you talked about identity and buzzwords, and it's not a buzzword. We as
Mhm.
coaches, all these coaches in the room will tell you that we are notoriously, famous for using buzzwords as
Mhm.
football coaches. How do I get away from using buzzwords to create an identity with these 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids to
Mhm.
really incorporating an identity that everybody knows, everybody lives, and everybody understands? Yeah, that's a tough one, isn't it?
No, actually it's not. So I'm gonna steal this one out of the page of my head coach from high school, Dom Zaccarelli. He pulled everybody in my senior summer going into my senior year, and we had just sent 5 guys D1 full ride. That's like unheard of to have
Yeah,
that
yeah,
many off one squad, you
right.
know? And we were starting from scratch, bottom of the barrel, pound for pound, the smallest team in the conference. He brought us captains in. He said, I'm giving you the team. Like, oh, what does that mean? We had a best 11 philosophy, and that meant Iron Man football for
Yeah,
6 or 7 of us.
yeah,
Every
yeah.
single down, every special team, like you're gonna have to thug it out for 48 minutes. You know, are they still playing 12-minute quarters in high school? I
Yes,
think so.
yes.
Yeah. Um, and Like the success of this culture is in your hands. I'm not going to let you don't get the decision to cut anybody. However, when we get through two-a-days, if there's anybody you feel like shouldn't be here, you're going to give that list to me. You're going to give me that list, and we're going to have a conversation about those guys. And it was the first time in my athletic career where I had been handed that kind of responsibility. And at the end of the day, knowing that, like, what's at stake and the responsibility that had been placed in me, Alex Cox, and Brian Burke's hands. And probably, if I'm being completely honest, for fear of being the bad guy,
Right.
we had to elevate the standard of the team. I don't want to cut anybody, so you better fucking show up.
Yeah.
You know, and all of a sudden, like, cats being late, not doing what they're supposed to do, you know, smoking and drinking, outside of practice and whatnot. It's like all of a sudden, like, all of that stuff became not cool and no go. And we only ended up cutting one dude, and he was just like, for a lot of obvious reasons.
Yeah. Off the
It was like unanimous, like, and the coaches knew it too, you know, so that it wasn't a hard sell by any means. One guy. And we went on, we got our asses handed to us by Georgetown Prep, 49-0. And then we went on a 9-0 run with 4 shutouts. And it was all because coach handed us the culture and trusted us to build it from the inside out with their supervision. And the identity became us. Like, we cannot afford, like, we were just very, very honest about, you know, obviously what was being said about us in the paper and just the objective reality of our situation. You know, Levon Chisley is at Penn State. Ricardo is at Army. Dave's at Air Force. Randy ended up playing 10 years in the league, you know, and Mo went with him to Maryland. We're like, we don't have that anymore. So we have to run a tight ship. We can't afford to be sloppy. Oh, and by the way, that team with those 5 guys, we went 5-5.
Huh.
And we turned around and went 9-1, and only 2 of us. I went to Air Force, and John Carlos went to Towson off that squad. Wild. That was it. So culture matters. And it's a top-down, inside-out job. And when you put the right guys in the right roles to do what they're supposed to do, and you make that your initiative and you hold them accountable to it, you will watch things change literally overnight.
Yeah. So I think it's key. I mean, just sitting here and putting myself, while you're talking about that, in back as a head coach, the inside out portion of it, coaches, I think, is huge, because I think as head coaches at the high school level, coaching these young kids, it's top down, right? So that's usually the way it works. But what I'm hearing you say, and how I would put it into motion, is inside out, top down, inside out. So the supervision is key, but empowering a certain amount of players, your leaders, your captains, whatever you want to call them, empowering those young men by forcing them to put skin in the game.
Yep.
Because the skin in the game part is, I want you to bring me a list of all the guys and we'll have a conversation with that. You can't cut them. That's my job, top, bottom. But inside out, you're responsible for the list. So now, like you said, it becomes almost a burden, right? I mean, shit.
Oh yeah, man. 100%.
I mean, what was the remember the Titans? Remember when Brazier goes to Ray and he goes to coach and he's like, hey, I want Ray off the team. And he's like, well, you know, it's your decision. You make that call.
Yep.
And that's really, really good. I think
Mhm.
for a lot of coaches, they're gonna be it's gonna because it just was a light bulb moment for me where it's
Mhm.
inside out as well as top down. Make your leaders, give them the empower them with responsibility
Yeah.
to have to have skin in the game.
Well, and I gotta tell you, like, looking back on it, I haven't told that story in a long time. Thanks
That's
for
a good
that.
one. Yeah,
Um, there's something to be said for being responsible for your own success, because I've coached so many guys and played with so many guys that blamed their success on coach and systems and stuff like that. And,
right.
when Coach Conley was shifting the culture at Commerce, I played for Fisher DeBerry at the academy.
Yeah,
And, the one thing my brother and I have in common is we both played for Hall of Fame coaches. And I'll never forget, being at the academy and everybody had won something,
sure.
a conference
Yeah,
championship, a state championship, multiple championships across different sports. And then we get to Commerce. And I'll never forget Coach Conley asking the room, we were just like, we were heading in a bad direction. And in a post practice meeting, he just said, show of hands, how many of you have won a championship of any kind? And there was like 10 of us,
yeah,
on an 85-man roster, it's like, oh, that's the problem. You don't know how to win,
right.
you know. Winning is a culture. It's not talent helps, but
Sure.
it's a culture. If you look at any tier in any state, you're going to see the same 2, 3, 4 teams winning consistently.
Mhm.
Every couple of years, 30-40% of those championships are going to be won by the same legacy programs,
Yep.
right? And long gone are the days where, um, the Bowdens and Paternos, that have been there for 30, 40 years, like that. So it's
Those
not the
days are
coaching.
gone.
It's
No,
not the
those
coaching,
days are gone. Right,
you know?
right.
And you might have, and in those programs, you might have one, maybe two year over year, and then you have a windfall of like 6 or 7 every
Right.
every once in a blue moon. So winning is a culture.
Yeah. Right, and
Like
I
if
think
I go to this high school, I expect that's part of the reason my parents. Well, uh, I was at I was both my parents were in the Air Force,
okay.
and my mom was active duty my whole childhood. And one of the things that they went looking for when we were moving high schools was not only solid academics, but is there a tradition of winning? Is
Right.
success part of the culture here? Is there an expectation? Is there an elevated standard of performance? Right. And that's how we ended up at Westlake is, we don't just win in football. We spread load the talent across every other sport and we win there too.
Mhm. And look what they're doing still,
So
you know?
those are the things that uh, are really, uh, really important and transcend personnel, coaching, and talent.
Yeah. I wanna ask you about something that you've talked about, and I know that you're passionate about,
Mhm.
and it's just one saying, and I've heard you say it before, and I've read it in all your materials, but, and I think a lot of coaches, again, and a lot of parents deal with this amongst high school athletes specifically because they don't quite have enough self-knowledge to understand themselves.
Mhm. Yeah, sure.
Um, you're not broken, right?
Yeah.
You're not broken,
Mhm.
you're out of
Yeah.
alignment.
Yeah.
And I think that's super key because, um, we high school coaches deal with a lot of mental health.
Sure.
And it always stems from kids feeling like they're broken.
Mhm.
So talk to us about, the premise behind you're not broken, you're out of alignment.
Man, so you're talking to a guy that has experienced the loss of identity at a significant level twice. Once, when athletics was over for me, and I walked away from football. And the second time, leaving the Marine Corps. Okay. And trying to figure out my place in the world without that identity. Right. Who am I
Right.
without ball? That's why so many of us ex players gravitate to coaching because we want to stay close to the game.
Mhm.
Not because of if you're being completely honest with yourself, I would say that the grand majority of us don't have a passion for coaching, but we don't know where we fit.
Right.
And that's how we find our way to coaching. I'm not saying that's not why you stay or create a career from it, but the impetus is
Mhm.
because that environment is foreign everywhere else.
Yep.
Okay. That same dynamic exists in leaving the Marine Corps. Okay. And it's really easy to play the blame game. You know, society is soft. Nobody understands what I bring to the table. I had a narrative in my mind that my 50% is most people's 100. And I would get really frustrated out here in the world because I felt like I was moving faster than everybody else, not accounting for the fact that in the Marines, whether you're scrubbing toilets or sending rounds down range, every decision is made under the premise of life and death, right? In in sport, every decision is under the frame of winning and losing. Okay. The stakes are not that high out here in the real world for most people. And to create that expectation and implicitly hold people against that standard who don't have that frame of reference only sets you up for failure. And you're the
Right.
only one that loses in that equation. Okay. And it's less a concession of ego and more so going back to aura, sitting still for long enough to figure out what's actually important to me in the here and now. Where am I actually trying to go? And in the releasing for me, there was so much unlearning that had to occur, right? Knife hands and motherfucks don't get it. That's not good leadership.
Right. Right.
That's just part of how it manifests in the culture that is the Marine Corps. That's not how you get things done out here in the civilian world. And that doesn't make the civilian world soft. However, that dark cloud of life and death doesn't exist out here.
No.
Okay. So you have to reframe your universe for the context of your situation and then take aligned action in that new identity towards those priorities. So to answer your question plainly, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just not acting in accordance with your integrity, courage, and ownership. And
Yes.
once you line that shit up, all of a sudden, all that friction that you used to experience shifts into nothing but flow, even when it's hard. Okay, because none of this removes life's friction. However, when you start leading yourself and others with aura, it's not that the load gets lighter. Your capacity for it increases.
Yeah. That's good. How do coaches uh hold their players accountable? Not and I'm not talking on the field. I'm talking
Mhm.
off the field. I'm talking at home. I'm talking in the classroom.
Yeah.
How do they hold them accountable? Because I think coaches again struggle with that.
Mhm. So I'll take this out of my parenting book. I got some good wisdom as I was coming into fatherhood. It doesn't matter if you're an ass whooper, a finger wagger, or the strictest of this, or, you want to be your kid's best friend.
Mhm.
Do not threaten or make promises that you don't intend to back up, because it's not your players. My kids do it. My wife does it. I do it.
Yeah.
Okay. It is human nature to see how far you can push that boundary. And if I say I'm going to break that toy or kick you off the team if you violate these rules, you better be prepared to do it. Because I promise you, it's not going to be your troublemaker that pushes your buttons. It's going to be the one with the most promise, the most upside, the highest potential, the things who everybody else in the world is kissing their ass and telling them how great they are. And they're the ones that are going to push that button and see how far they can take it.
Yeah.
So what from a cultural perspective, the knowing needs to be that coach is a man of his word, a man of integrity, a woman of integrity, meaning they do exactly what they say they're going to do.
Yeah. That's good. My dad, gosh, after he passed away, and I got it when I coached for him too, because he would give it to all of his assistant coaches at
Mhm.
the start of, late July at the start of our staff meetings, because we'd always have about a week of just staff meetings to get rolling before the kids came in. And he
Mhm.
would give out his coaching. It was called coaching beliefs and organization.
Yeah.
And it was about 15 pages. So in my book, the last chapter, I
Mhm.
took that and I adapted it for high school.
Oh,
But
cool.
it's pretty much the same thing, and it goes through everything, man. That's 15, 20 pages.
Mhm.
And I remember this. He said something in there, one of his rules for his assistant coaches.
Mhm.
There were a lot of things, but one of them said, if you're going to threaten, follow through.
That's it.
Do not make promises you're not going to keep.
That's right.
And a threat is a promise.
Yep.
And when I say threat, I'm not like, hey, if you do this, you're going to run,
Right.
25 gassers. A
Mhm.
threat is, listen, you got another chance. If you're not going to run this play correctly, or if you're not going
Mhm.
to do your assignment and you're telling me you know it, then I'm getting your ass out.
Mhm.
Well, get their ass out if they don't do it.
Yep.
If you tell a kid, hey, the next time I get a teacher reaches out to me and it's negative,
Mhm.
you're suspended for X, like, do it.
Yep.
The greatest example I've seen of that, and you'll like this. My former brother-in-law was a head high school coach in Arizona for 20 years.
Mhm.
The last place he was at, he started the school is called Perry High School
Yep.
in Gilbert, Chandler, Arizona. Okay.
Mhm.
So he started that school, coached the Purdy's,
Okay.
Brock and Chuba, and he coached a lot of good kids. But so coached my own two younger kids. So after Brock left,
Mhm.
his brother Chuba was going to be a junior. And my oldest son, who was starting linebacker, was a senior, Chuba's junior year.
Mhm.
When Chuba was a senior, my youngest son was a sophomore, and he
Okay.
was a lineman. And Preston had one rule he had a lot of rules, but one of the rules was you do not, whether it's during the season or not, if you are at a party and there's drinking or smoking, you leave.
Mhm.
You do not go to an unsupervised party. Okay, so those two things. Don't
Mm.
No unsupervised party. So if no one's drinking and smoking and you're in an you better leave.
Mhm.
And same thing, supervised, drinking, smoking, like it doesn't matter. So they got wind, and as coaches, we find out everything, right? That's
Oh,
what the kids
yeah.
don't know.
I got a story about that too.
So they were going into the Monday of playing Cesar Chavez High School, who has athletes, but they're notoriously they're not very good. And
Okay.
Perry should have beat them by 4 touchdowns, right?
Mhm.
And that weekend, he gets word that a bunch of kids were at this party, so he bring in Chuba included. So he
Mhm.
brings in these kids and suspends them. I mean, there's like 11 kids. Well,
Mhm.
that started these kids, and these parents were like, well, so and so was here, so and so was here. He ended up suspending 36 kids. He
Woo!
Yeah, all all starters mainly. I think there were 2 starters that weren't there
Mhm.
and second team kids. So now he goes into Cesar Chavez and is playing with the scout team kids
Yep.
and sophomores.
Mhm.
And they got beat by like, I don't know, 9 or 10 points, but he would not, and there's a chapter about it in the book, no
Mhm.
compromise.
That's right.
And that man, I will say, that's the way he lived. That's the way my
Mhm.
former father-in-law
Yep.
lives. Like, if they say they're gonna do something and hold you
Mhm.
to a standard,
That's right.
I don't care who you are, and that's a hard thing to do, man.
Mhm.
That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Last thing I wanna ask you about is, from a leadership standpoint, I
Mhm.
I think a lot of coaches do a pretty good job of developing their leaders and embracing them
Mhm.
and, empowering them with other types of things, but
Mhm.
I don't think a lot of coaches understand how to, um, identify leaders.
Mhm.
So I mean, sorry about the
No,
dogs,
you're
man,
good, man.
2 big dogs. But from an identifying leaders
Mhm.
standpoint, you got younger kids or you got kids that may not be, you know, be the most popular kid or the best athlete that are
Mhm.
leaders. So how should coaches go about identifying those kids?
Your best leaders are the ones that hold themselves to the standard that you create. And
There you go.
so for us, you know, Joanna and I, my business partner, we look at everything. We judge ourselves and each other against integrity, courage, and ownership, right?
Mhm.
And we've given we've given each other permission to call it out, right? And in my marriage, in business, with my partner, with our clients, there's this philosophy that we've adopted called updating and upgrading agreements. Okay. And you can do this season to season while maintaining integrity, courage, and ownership because you got different kids every season, right? You might have a different staff from one season to the next. However, the values are the same, but the agreements to uphold those values and standards may need adaptation in how they're implemented. Okay. So I'll give you an example. My wife was a six-figure earner when we got married. She left corporate and started her own company, and that thing took off. And then the pandemic happened and it
Yeah.
shut. I mean, like just closed the doors on it overnight. And she came into business with me. And her narrative of contribution in our marriage and an implicit expectation of mine was that we would both contribute financially. Okay.
Mhm.
We sunset the gym. And I say this jokingly, we break up as business partners. And in that separation of business and marriage, what was hanging out there in the wind was that implicit expectation from both our parts that she would continue to contribute financially, right? And I asked her in what I call a courageous conversation. It's like, hey, as we move into this next season of our lives, I can tell that it is your calling to be mom. And
Mhm.
like I know, that is the
Yeah.
full-time job of full-time jobs.
Yes. 100%.
Okay. And just waterworks. I was like, "Oh, are we okay? Are we good?" And she says to me, I didn't know that was on the table because we never talked about it,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? We were just in this flow of our relationship, even though the variables and the dynamics and the context and the situation changed a lot over the 11 years that we've been married. We never had that conversation, right? Does this agreement as it stands now, still serve our fullest expression and how we show up for each other and out there in the world. And it takes a lot of humility because you have no idea what kind of box what kind of Pandora's box you're potentially opening by asking the question. But the question needs to be asked so that you can adjust the culture to fit the team that you have and update and upgrade those agreements while still holding those core values, in the case of Next Level and my family: integrity, courage, and ownership. What does it need to look like now, with, in the context of our scenario, the season we're going into, the team that we have, the staff that we have, to uphold integrity, courage, and ownership? What updates and upgrades to these agreements need to be made so that we can make that happen?
That's good. I think, again, for coaches, keep it simple. Um, how do you identify leaders? And you said it. Your best leaders are the kids that uphold the standards
Mm-hmm.
and live the standards. And I
Yep.
think we forget that because it's easy to look at the best athlete or the loudest kid or the kid that's been starting for 3 years. And that takes me back. I mean, looking at kids that we've had as leaders that don't even hardly see the field.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and everybody loves them and everybody listens to them when they speak,
Yep.
and because they're the hardest working kids and they're the
Mm-hmm.
ones that live the standards and uphold the standards. So,
Right.
Mike, before we roll out, tell people where they can find you, name of the book, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's gonna be down here on the bottom once I edit it. But
All
yeah,
good.
let's
All good. Yeah. I'm gonna make it super simple for you. You can find
yeah.
me at Coach Durs on everything. On
Okay.
Instagram, you can track everything Next Level's doing at nextlevel_PHX. And then you can find our Substack, my podcast, and everything that we do from an executive coaching perspective at nextlevelhq.co.
Okay.
Nextlevelhq.co.
Okay. Okay. And I will, again, I will, it'll be dropped on the screen. People are seeing it right now and it'll be in the description and everything
Cool.
else. So, hey, we're going to get you back on here, at some other time, but
I'd love it,
keep
man.
rolling with it. Yeah.
For sure.
Again, brother, I appreciate you and, love you, man. And thanks for your service heart and what you do for everybody else.
Honored to be here, man. Thanks you.
Yeah.